Welcome to International Academy United World College's debate on capitalism. My name is Mario Costa. I'm from Tijuana/San Diego, and it's my privilege to be the moderator for tonight's debate. To my right, we have the con group, Corinne Riley and Josh Acatzin. To my left, we have the pro group, Jimena, Terrazas, and Kilenyi.
We have to take into considerations countries that are developing at the moment. If we think about Mexico, there's a big divide between public and private schooling. I mean, that's the truth in all different countries. But what happens is when you have a division between the public and the private, what happens is also there's a social division. So having this big gap between the people who have public education, people who don't, also creates this rigidity in the social status.
Well, I think, as you said, developing countries like Mexico should perhaps focus more on, development and not just education. But to be honest, when you have private education, then you have a group of kids who are able to receive a higher quality education and therefore, take the leading positions in a country. If you wouldn't have private education, then should everyone get, worse education? I mean, I don't think so. Then you would just get bad leaders and no improvements within the country.
If there's 8% acceptance rate in a school, at the same time, there are thousands of people at that same school who aren't going to be accepted. There are millions of people within a country who aren't going to be going to a schooling. And the problem with that, with the private, secondary education, means that there are millions of people that are doing absolutely nothing. And the government needs to be providing with them an education to break the poverty cycle.
Well, I don't think that the lack of space for kids to study is a problem in capitalism. To be honest, you always need resources, you always need money to provide that education for the children, to provide the schools and to provide the training for the teachers to educate the kids. I mean, without a hope for profit, who is going to open a school? No one.
For the con side, so from our point of view, let's say that we believe that there's a widespread kind of thought process in the world that capitalism brings to a better healthcare system, to better research, more R&D brings, the fact that people can have more medical research, more vaccinations and things like that. But we would like to, start off our argument saying that that's not the truth. While America right now is seen as kind of the leader in medical research, at the same time it's spending 1/5 of its national income on healthcare, but yet it's getting worse results than even smaller countries such as Cuba nearby, which are, obviously much poorer, but have better and more specific research. We know that state-funded research has brought to amazing and exceptional outlooks and outcomes. And so we believe that it's not necessary for capitalism to be part of the research, whereas the government can actually do it itself. And that's the basis upon which our side is starting this healthcare analysis. Private healthcare is way too expensive for a big part of the population in the world. In the US, about 43 million people are not covered by any plan. And even in Mexico right now, 43.5 million, which is about 40% of the population, have absolutely no access to any institution at all where they can receive health care.
Well, I'm sorry, but in capitalism, it's not just Mexico and the United States we need to look at, it's also other countries. I mean, when you look at public health care, a lot of people that are in favor of public health care just try and demonize private health care. And you know what the problem is? There's no such thing as free public health care because everyone pays through taxes. It's the government financing public health care. I mean, what is the point of demonizing private health care just because some people can afford it? And if some countries have issues not having a public health care system, well, tough. It's the country's fault, not capitalism's.
Know to everyone that under capitalism and the mass production of our goods and products that we like to buy every day, and usually involved unsafe, unpaid labor in usually not very developed countries. Every phone that we have right now is created by a material that is mined in eastern Congo by children slaves. Even the chocolate that we like to eat every day is the cocoa is taken in by Côte d'Ivoire in East Congo using forced labor. Uzbekistan, for example, is the second largest producer of cotton in the world. How do they do this? Every year they close down the schools for 3 weeks and bus all the kids out to the fields to have them pick them. For example, in China, you know, the new GM shops in China right now, the factories, you can call them, pay about less than £5 a day. And in Mexico, there are about 3.5 million children between the years of 5 and 17 years old who are exploited.
And you can look at, by looking at the graph, that around the world in Africa, there's about 40 kids, 40 boys, 40 girls working. In Asia, there's about 60 and 60. And you know, Latin America, it's a little bit less, but it's still a big number. We're talking about children and having to get into forced labor.
A lot of people like to criticize the industrialization of third world countries, you know, within capitalism, but I just don't see how else we could improve the situation in those countries. This is only a transitional time. I mean, how else would you like to help a country with foreign aid? I mean, in Italy, for example, the north of Italy is paying taxes for years for the south, you know, just to keep it up economically. And you know, foreign aid tends to just perpetuate a dependency upon it. Just look at Africa. I mean, how many years have we been sending money to Africa and nothing's happening still? There's a lot of corruption. And so I just don't understand how else you could improve the situation. Well, I think we should all agree on something and you know, just agree on the fact that most people tend to act self-interestedly, especially, you know, in capitalism. And so if I have a company and I can produce somewhere else cheaper, for example, Bangladesh, then I will indeed move my factories over there. And actually, let's just, you know, I just want to tell you guys something, that in China and Hong Kong, there used to be a lot of sweatshops, right? But nowadays, they're decreasing. People are getting, you know, skilled with work, and they're able to finance their kids to put them through education. And this is actually solving problems across the world. All capitalism needs is time. Please see a show of hands of those in favor of democracy.
It's a trick question.
As I can see, it's most of the people. Now, in my opinion, disagree with me, but I think capitalism is indeed a democratic system. You know, people have the money, and even though it's not a fair vote, it's not one vote per person, but people with their money vote for certain products, making them financially more or less successful. And you know, thereby making those products which people need or want more, you know, get cheaper, being produced more efficiently, and the price is driven down, and you know, and in some cases, or you know, I'd like to say in most cases, the quality driven up. I think that, you know, corruption, I do believe it exists. It obviously exists, and within capitalism especially. But let me just take, you know, 2 other systems, since you know, a lot of people mention socialism as one of the systems that they're in favor of. Well, in socialism, let's take Fidel Castro, right? He amassed a huge wealth of $900 million in 2006. And according to the Havana Times, the average Cuban income is $20 to $25 a month for one person. Now, that's within socialism. Within communism, you know, farmers were obliged to send most of their crops into the cities, where they, you know, had to feed the workers because they idolized the worker. And, you know, the farmers just thought that it became, you know, inefficient, and they just, you know, that's why the system collapsed, partially because people just saw that it doesn't work. I mean, tell me a system that doesn't have corruption. I think it's not a matter of a system, it's a matter of human nature.
So yeah, right now we're going to talk about taxes. Someone before mentioned Sweden and their progressive taxes, and on this side we fully approve of that. However, capitalists, specifically Mark, like to criticize taxes and avoid them basically at all costs. However, you know, it was mentioned before that there's a part of our day-to-day life that just can't be provided by capitalism. Health insurance, hospitals, schools, fire departments, policemen, even street lights are things that are completely provided by the government. If we were in a completely capitalist system, you know, who would do that? Who would pay for it? There's no way to really set it up. Even right now, I mean, I think a lot of us know of people who just buy houses in tax evading countries like Monaco, the Cayman Islands, Mauritius. There are a lot of places where people can very easily store their money away and just sit on it for as long as they want. Right now, in fact, Google is paying absolutely no taxes in the United Kingdom. Starbucks pays no taxes, and there are many other examples like that. So we see large corporations right now. Sometimes they get audited, they get taken away before court about their tax evasions. However, it's very easy for them to, you know, pay off the whatever their court wants them to pay. And then they just continue doing their damaging activities, doing whatever they want, not only socially and economically damaging the world, but even environmentally, and we'll get to that later. And what the capitalists, specifically Mark, have to realize sorry, is that taxes are important for us to live in our day-to-day life. If we want to continue to live the way we are, we need taxes. And it should be even obvious to them that having healthcare systems, education systems, it's good for everyone, even yourselves, because then you have a more educated and a more strong labor force.
Cry me a river. Okay, let me just state some statistics of why I do not want to pay a single penny of tax in my life.
You mean that?
I do mean that. In the United Kingdom, let's take this for example. According to the United Kingdom National Health Service, the NHS, smoking cigarettes causes around 80% of deaths from lung cancer, around 80% of deaths from bronchitis and emphysema, and about 17% of deaths from heart disease. More than a quarter of all cancer deaths can be attributed to smoking. Now, in the UK, 78% of one pack of cigarettes consists of something called a sin tax, which is, in my opinion, it's an assumption that, as soon as someone purchases one pack of cigarettes, they're automatically getting cancer and they're going to have to be treated in the public healthcare system. Is that realistic? Not in my opinion. I mean, actually living in cities, according to many medical specialists, is worse than smoking a couple of cigarettes a day. Now, I don't see gas being taxed 78%, do I? I wouldn't see many cars on the streets then, I think, governments are collecting money in the form of taxes on an unfair basis, and they're just wasting it on public health care, which in my opinion, as I stated before, is simply an inefficient system which the government uses taxes to shovel the money into a pit that is just inefficient. I think, we're paying.
But I do believe that capitalism as a system, yes, it's great, but remember, it was written with an intention, but as human beings, we use it everywhere differently. I mean, yes, we're supposed all to be wealthy. Yes, wealth is great, but wealth makes us greedy. Wealth gives us power, and we feel that we can oppress other people. I mean, yeah, like you say, capitalism is great, and yes, it has wonderful things, but when we use it, when our government uses it, and there's so much corruption, we are not really observing capitalism as it is. We're going beyond what the intention of it was. Yes, companies can go and try to help other countries like they have in Mexico. But you know what? When they come in Mexico, they don't have to go by the laws that they have to go in the United States, UK, whatever. So what they do, the environmental issues, they don't care. The safety issues, they don't care. The hours of labor, they don't care.
The working conditions that are existing in the third world today, 120 years ago, those were the working conditions in the United States. And the reason that they don't exist in the United States anymore is not because of capitalism, but because of a long, bloody, very hard struggle for labor rights. Not because they did nice things for them or they got educated or did this. It's that the workers stood up. Capital is mobile. It can go to any country in the world that it wants to. If they don't like the deal they get somewhere, they go somewhere else. People are not allowed to do that.
Well, I'm sorry, but if workers start protesting in factories, I mean, it happened with Apple's factory in China. People started protesting and not doing the work, and they achieved better pay, better conditions. It happens everywhere. As I said, capitalism is indeed a democratic system, and people can achieve change. It's just people don't want to. It's important to mention that there are companies within capitalism which are targeting the people with higher incomes. For example, Timberland, the shoe company, they plant trees and they overprice their shoes. Or like, Tom's, the shoe company, which provides shoes for kids in Argentina. Or we could say Starbucks, which actually finances the building of schools. These are all capitalist companies which are doing the government's jobs in those countries where the government does not seem to care about the problems.
If we think of pure capitalism, we have to understand that there's no compassion. You know, like, where's the compassion in this system? It seems to breed greed and breeds contempt for people who are not and will never be part of that system. So if we recognize that we are, as a species, supposed to be evolving, you know, that if a socialist system or something in between there is going to actually take care of people, that we should recognize that we are all connected and that we have to be evolving to keep up with them.